everybody. This is G Garza. Welcome to another episode of Put It Together Conversations. We're going to give a couple minutes for people to join in, but my guest, Pritesh Shah, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back, man.
Well, thank you. For those of you that follow Put It Together podcast, Pritesh was on one of our episodes. And as you know, Conversations is about bringing back some of those guests to talk about topics that they are interested in. Today's topic will be
victimization.
And we'll tell you why and how we picked it. We're going to give a couple seconds for people to join in. If you like, as you're joining in, please share that on your page so people can watch it.
Yeah.
Again, you are watching Put It Together Conversations with G Garza and my special guest co-host, Pritesh Shah. We'll be right back.
Yes.
People are already sharing, which is good.
Boyfriend's watching.
Yes.
Christian Ramirez.
I pay him for that.
I'm sure you do.
There we are. It's a nice photo. Where'd you get that from?
My buddy gave it to me. He was moving out of this place.
You should have made up some really
I bought it at a flea market. I met this girl. It looked like she saw Aladdin. She's like, "Let me give you a gift," and I took it away in my magic carpet. I don't know, dog. Shit. Don't pay attention to this.
For those of you that don't know a little bit about Pritesh's story, I actually met him at a comedy show. It was a benefit show for rehab.
Jewish rehab. But they exist.
They do.
Apparently, when you have a lot of money, you drink a lot.
How long have you been doing stand-up?
I started almost 9 years ago.
Yeah.
But then I took a break for like 3 or 4 years because I got so busy with acting and producing. But now I'm back on the...
Hard life, man.
Not gonna lie. So now I'm back. On the grind.
Doing it. But you have your own show,
I got my own show, Barefoot Comedy, at Mystic Journey Yoga in Venice. And I'm performing all over LA, Southern California. I was just in Orlando. So it's been fun, man. Producing, doing...
You have a hard life.
It's tough out here. It's tough out here in these streets in Sherman Oaks, bro.
For those of you that have been following, we were at Pritesh's last show doing a pre-show show.
Yeah.
So the next show will be July 13th.
July 13th, 7 p.m. Come out. It is barefoot for a reason. You got to take your damn shoes off. So
I didn't know that. I wear my shoes.
Yeah. If you got ugly feet, you better put some socks on.
But on July 13th, we will have a pre-show show for the comedians who will be on the show or participating during the show. Will be on my show for an hour before, talking about their careers before we go onto that show.
Yeah.
So if you want information on that, stay tuned. We will give you address and information on where to go. I forgot to put my... Can you guys hear me?
Looks like we can hear you.
Can y'all hear me okay? I hope you can hear me okay. Yes, Christian, I said your name. Christian was our camera guy at the last pre-show show.
Yeah.
So I'm going to... again, for those of you joining us, this is Put It Together Conversations. Pritesh Shah is my co-host today. Christian will get a pedicure. I hope so, hon. We are talking today about victimization.
Victimization. Well, you told me to think of one topic, so that's the first thing that popped in my head because it seems to be something, it is something that's very prevalent in our society right now with every news line, right? It's identity-based issues, which turns into victimization.
Why is it important for you to talk about it today?
Well, I think it's an issue. It's a pretty deep stemming issue. So let's take a step back on where it starts. So, for example, same with you, immigrant, right? Immigrant. I came here. My parents came here in the 80s. I was first generation. I was born here. But what you get told by society and my own family was, you're an immigrant. You're an immigrant. So that was another identity I took. Not only was I kept being told that I'm Indian, but that now I'm an immigrant, right? It's something that you're carrying on your shoulders. So naturally, when you latch onto an identity, and we'll get deeper into that a little later, but when you latch onto an identity, you're gonna have victim mentality. That's naturally just what happens, right? If you take on an identity, like if you're willing to die for something, you're willing to kill for something. It's the same energy, and you see that people a lot. Like they'll die for their ethnicity, their religion, their sexuality, whatever it may be. We've making it a big thing. We've been we should change it. It should be victimization. To me is the same as identity. So this conversation could be just, might as well we talk about identity, obsession with identity, and how that's really impacted us in a very negative way. It doesn't really allow for deep consciousness, you know? So for example, like for me, when I moved to Hollywood 9 years ago, my mentality was, I'm gonna show everyone what an Indian man could be, right? Let me show what an Indian man could be, because those were my identities I was protecting. I was like, what does it mean to be a man? Well, okay, you gotta be in shape, you gotta be able to provide, make money, and hide your emotions, because you gotta be strong all the time. That's what society put on me, and that's what I was holding on to feel validated.
That was your shield.
Yeah, that was my shield. That was what I was in. You see most people, most men acting in some form of that manner, because society's really imposed that. A lot is cleansing a little bit, but so when I started doing the work and transforming, I started realizing, man, I don't know what Indian or a man means. It's nothing I have to actually do. It just is. It's the package that I was given, and you can take from it what you want.
Right.
I don't need to prove anything or hold on to anything. I just am. I simply am.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I just simply am. I'm a human being having an experience. That's it.
Yeah.
So if you want to label, are you straight? My sexuality has nothing to do with anything. The fact that it's even become race has become a national thing that we talk about, or it's because we've made it an identity issue, right? We've made it an identity issue. Everything's about identity. Who are you? What is your identity? It's a question they ask children all the time. What is your identity? Who are you?
Right.
What is your identity?
And I'm guilty of doing that.
We all are.
A lot.
We are, because that's your ego. Ego always wants a conclusion. You always want a conclusion for everything. And it's like the identity, it's when people see all these murders happening around the world and gun violence and violence in general, why are people doing it in the first place? Because we're protecting an identity, right? How dare you attack Indians, Pakistan? I mean, my own family, like, oh, F Pakistan. I'm like, are you kidding me? Your identity's so latched onto this invisible lines that we've created that you're willing to have that attitude? Christians, Muslims, Hindus, gays, straight, black, white, it goes on and on and on. These are just tip of the iceberg. You can do anything in the world. But if you start transforming and you start living outside of the identity-based thing that we've done in society, man, you start opening up drastically.
Right.
Because you have nothing to prove, you have nothing to protect.
Because
I got nothing to protect.
Especially in I don't like bringing up politics, but it does play a lot. In our current political climate, everybody's trying to box us in somewhere.
But I don't feel like it's current. It's always been like that since the beginning of time.
You feel like it hasn't gotten worse?
No, I don't think it's gotten worse at all. I actually think it's better than it's ever been. The problem it feels like it's being worse is because if you go 200 years ago, let's just use this example. That's not that long ago, okay? In the concept of time, 200 years is nothing. You only had knowledge of what was happening in your neighborhood.
Right.
So you wake up, and if no one got murdered and everyone's living fine, it's cool. Your surrounding was like, for example, this building in my condo complex would be my worldview.
Right.
Is this? I didn't know what was happening around the world. Right now, things aren't necessarily worse. It's what's always been happening, except now we have the technology and the knowledge of what's happening everywhere. People have been raping, pillaging, murdering, and enslaving people since the beginning of mankind. You know what I mean? We have been doing horrendous things to each other since the beginning of civilization.
Yeah.
Look at the kingdoms. I mean, when everything was more of a microscope, India had tons of kings. Every country had a bunch of kings and queens. You had little territories. What'd you do? You took another territory, you killed and raped their people and expanded your territory. Marriage was you married your son to a powerful person's daughter to expand land. It's nothing new. It's just now we're getting shocked and surprised. We've always had the same formula. It changes a little bit here and there with technology and time goes on. But when you really look at the deeper issue, a human issue, a consciousness issue, that's the only solution.
Yeah. Because I've mentioned that to people before. Bad things have existed forever. We just didn't know they were happening at that level because we didn't have this.
Yeah.
I would not be able to do what we're doing now, the show, without this technology, and that's how it gets across. But okay, so let's.
Well, technology is a very good thing. The way we can do this and talk to people and stay in touch with people. Technology is not the problem.
Right.
We're the problem because we don't know how to utilize it. Just like we're the problem because we don't know how to use our minds. That's why so many people are suffering from... We can all agree that we're the most complicated technology we know of. We can't figure out... Human beings, our consciousness, we can't replicate it. Okay?
Right.
So we are the most... But it's like Sadhguru said it best. We don't have the user manual to the most complicated technology. Most people's intelligence, do you think, is used for positivity or negativity?
Say that again?
Most people's intelligence. Negativity.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's towards themselves.
Right.
Right? Because they don't know how to shut this thing off. They don't have control of it. Most people are all insane because they don't have control of their own mechanism. Yeah. And so when they're sitting at home alone, their thoughts are negative. What, should, could, I'm not good enough, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. And then now we see a stronger issue of depression. Depression isn't not controllable. It's very much a problem of how society's brought us up and how we're using this being.
And for those of you who are in the 2 o'clock, the camera is off. How is it off? I don't know what else to do right now. Well, you're not here to work the camera, Christian, so it's going to be where it's going to be.
It's way off.
I know, right? If you guys were watching the 2 o'clock show, we actually talked a little bit about this. How living in our past can affect how we do things in our present.
It's a story we continue. We all write our own book.
So let's because we're talking about identity now.
Yeah.
You're correct. I was brought up. I was born in Mexico. Moved here when I was 3. It was that mentality, like you are Mexican, and this is your limits. And I believe that's one of the reasons my parents didn't have high expectations for me. Like, you will grow up, get married, work in a factory, and you'll be good. That's your life. And we're happy, so you should be happy. And then the moment that I started Americanizing, per se, and started breaking away from their plan, there was a disconnect.
Yeah.
And I believe, unbeknownst to them, I don't think they did it on purpose, but my parents were the first ones to try to put me back in that box. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's like the thing that society does that too. I mean, when you're raised, it's like, my parents would be like, you're Indian, you're Hindu. It's a constant immigrant thing. I go to school, everything's Jesus, and people ate meat, and I come home, it's Krishna, and be vegetarian. Yeah. You're always playing with that. And from a very young age, an identity's put on you. It's not who you are. I mean, children are we're born spiritual beings who are completely fine. It's society and our parents especially that really mess us up. I know they love us, but you have unhealed people raising unhealed people. Right? So the trauma in this line, it continues and continues and continues. So I think it's actually interesting to me when we look at certain issues that we find in society and people go, why is this happening? Well, that's like going to a pizza place and being shocked that there's pizza on the menu. Well, no shit. If you're going to be in this society where everyone's latching onto a religion, their sexual identity, their racial identity, their economic identity, yada, 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 problems will emerge. It's not if, it's when. It's going to. So we're going to have another shooting. There's going to be another mass issue because any of these identities turn into fundamentals. Right? You're going to have fundamentalism when you are projecting identity-based realities for people. Instead of eliminating the identities and allowing people to get into their truth. I know this may sound like wacky to a lot of people, but that's the truth when you really get down to it. These are all masks that people have put on us. Right? You know, so you have a lot of people where they'll go, I am an Indian straight male. That's freaking limiting.
Yeah, right?
Damn. That's how you live life every day. So when you use your intellect in that way, I am an Indian man and I'm straight. So whatever that means to you, you will do everything to validate that.
Right.
So if someone says something to you that makes you feel gay, what are you going to do? You're going to attack. You're going to be upset because it goes against your identity. Right? So when you start eliminating identity, you're actually untouchable. Nothing can faze you.
Right. So
that's where true power comes from.
Let me fix this because we're getting camera directions from...
You're totally off camera, hon. How is that possible? I see you on there.
I know, but he's controlling. What can I say? So for those of you joining us right now, we are talking, this is Putting Together Podcast Conversations. Pritesh, Shah and I are talking about... we started off with victimization, but it really turned into an identity.
Well, because that's what it is. You become the victim when you're identity. Right? You have women doing that a lot too, and I know that's not always a popular opinion, but not just women, but I'll just use that because we had the hashtag #MeToo thing. It's like, well, I'm a woman and this is why it's tough to be a woman. Well, first of all, every woman has a different story, just like every man has a different story.
Right.
And we got so caught up with the differences between men and women. Only difference we have biologically is our sexual organs. 99% of the stuff that we share in our bodies are the exact same.
Right.
I mean, I could save a woman's life by donating my heart and vice versa. Okay? Right. I mean, so it's interesting to me that we've got so caught up in that. Like, sexual issues shouldn't even be an issue. And I know it's easy to say shouldn't be. But I'm just saying, what someone does in their personal life, in their bedroom, the fact that it's a political conversation, a Twitter conversation, an Instagram conversation, or even anything societal conversation is completely unnecessary.
Well, let's go with that, because before the show started, we were actually talking about Pride Parade. Because I mentioned that I got to march in it this year. When growing up as a Latino, as a gay man, my dad kind of had this conversation with me where he was like, you're going to have to try harder,
of course,
to get where a white guy is going to do it. I kind of believed that.
And that became your reality.
It was like, okay, so I believe it. And then I went to school and I realized that, because I was a pretty smart kid. I don't know what happened, but I was a smart kid at one point. I was top of my class. And I went to trade school and I was top of the class. And I was like, well, I'm not really trying, and I'm here. So that changed that key where I was like, I don't have to try harder. I just have to do my best, and I will succeed.
It's like when you got screwed before you started.
Right.
That's what happens to all of us when your parents raise you in that way, and then you start living. Look, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, those who think they can and those who think they can't are both right. Confucius said that. And so then we use that thing. So you have a problem. If you have a population of people who live in that belief system, it's going to happen that way. If you believe life is going to be tougher because of whatever you decided it is, you will fulfill that.
Yeah. But ultimately, being Latino is not what made life tough for me. It's drugs and alcohol what made it tough. But that's accountability I'm talking about. That's accountability. Your decisions that you've made. And we realize that our outside identity affects people in various ways, but it's our internal decisions, it's the energy that we live in and that we put out are actually the most effective, that move us through life. Those are the things. But it's very easy to not take accountability for that. So I commend you for saying that. Because a lot of people in your position could be like, oh, it has nothing to do with that. That's bullshit. It's just the fact that I'm a gay Latino. It's hard. No one likes me. No one gives me opportunity. It's bullshit. It's like a lot of people, for example, I had a friend, what was it? Like, he Mexican guy, right? And he would always say, I never get a promotion at work. It's because I'm Mexican. Guy's racist. I'm like, no, it's because you're a fucking idiot. And I'm dead serious. Have you ever thought about that? Like, it's so easy to use all this stuff as a crutch, and most of the time, it is like that. There's isolated incidents, of course, but people want to live in this idea that people look in the mirror and see how they live through life. How many people are living through life that binary? Life is full of tons of variables and prejudices and biases that are incredibly complicated. Incredibly complicated. All right, so we established that we have a similar background as far as upgrade.
Immigration and stuff.
When did you realize that was in place, that limitation was in place?
I'd say when I saw the way my family's friends operate through life. Like, for me, it's a little different. Yes, I was an immigrant also, but my parents were immigrants. I was born here, but we grew up in an environment where, like, my parents were well off. My parents' friends were all well off. So it was an interesting dynamic. It's like being brown with traditional white privilege. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to me. I was like, this story doesn't fit well for me, because what they consider white privilege to me is brown privilege. Like, this is such bullshit. Everything you say white people get is what I have in my life. My life's freaking amazing. Right. That's what was in the cards for me. So it's any generalization, you're in a very tough place. And that's not a popular opinion. Like, when we have these types of conversations, you will find people get very upset. And the people that get upset are the people that are obsessed with their identity. Immediately. It's like if I talk to a woman right now and she goes, well, you don't know what it's like to be a woman. Complete defense mechanism. No, I may not know what it's like to be you. First of all, you don't represent a whole gender. Secondly, we're not that different. Thirdly, anyone who says they don't know what it's like to be a woman, or they don't know what it's like to be black or gay or whatever, it's like, well, there's the opposition of that exists as well. If you're going to identify with a gay man, and that's your obsession, and that's your identity, I am a gay man. You don't know what it's like to be gay. Okay, well, you don't like to be straight then.
True.
And you've already created an identity crisis because you've already put yourself in the victim mentality. I am gay, life is harder, fuck everybody. And that's how you're living through life. Or anything. I am Mexican, I'm Indian, I'm this or that. Right? You have the same thing. How come there's some people that grow up in poverty and make it? Because they didn't let that stop them or identify them.
Okay, so just so that I can understand where we're going.
I know, we're all over the place.
Christian's agreeing with you. There is your racial background, your heritage, but then you grew up in
America.
Yeah, but you grew up in abundance per se. When you're not in that circle or in that environment, did anything become hard? I mean, because
well, I had a lot of emotion out of abandonment issues with my mother. I was sent to India when I was 8 months old. I didn't see my mom for 4 years. Of course, everyone has their trauma.
Right.
I think we talked about this in the last one, and that's the biggest issue is, well, not a biggest issue, but there is a big issue is we live in a society where everyone wants to compare their pain. My pain's worse than your pain. And you can't do that. You cannot do that. And once you humble yourself, look, we can all agree here objectively that rape, a woman getting raped or a man getting raped for that, is worse than someone getting a B at school, right? Can we agree on that? Right. I think most people will be like, yeah, that's worse. Well, go tell that to kids in Japan and India. They're jumping off buildings when they get a B. Because it doesn't matter how you view it objectively. It matters how someone feels and the environment that they've grown up with. And if you've been raised that the only validation for you to be alive and only worth you have is your intelligence at school, getting a B means life's over. Right. Now, you can say that sounds ridiculous. It doesn't matter what you think it sounds like. It matters what the truth is. So that's the problem. We have a lot of judgment, and we've all imposed like a ladder of importance. But that's a ladder of importance to you. That's not the ladder of importance to everyone else.
So that's why I'm trying to understand. Like, obviously, for those of you who have not listened to the podcast, I suggest you go back and find Pritesh's podcast. Let me swipe this out of the way. Where we talked a little more about your personal story, and we have time to share a little bit of it. Obviously, we all have gone through issues. We've all survived something. We've all lived through something. And I'm 48. I guarantee you there's a lot there. For those of you that don't know the whole story, how did you work your way to get out of that victimization mentality?
It was probably when I was 24 or 25 when I moved to LA to pursue acting. Okay. Because that was the one time where I realized, what do I want to do? What's right for me? What am I in alignment with? And it was always entertainment. That's what I did my whole life, but I was always told it wasn't an option. I was raised to think that you had to be the chosen one, or you're special, or your father or mother or someone had to be a producer, director, writer, whatever. And I grew up in a well-to-do family. I went to school for accounting. I was a minor in English. I was going to go to law school. So you were under immense pressure to uphold the family name, do well, make a lot of money, yada, 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 right? And for me, that never felt right. Never felt right. The thought of working for somebody and working in a booth 9 to 5, I mean, it still sounds very depressing, right? And at that time, I didn't know what the feeling was, but I wasn't excited to start my job. I definitely I wasn't enthralled at all. And there was a moment where, spirit kind of is like your awareness, your awakening, whatever you want to call it. It definitely wasn't my spiritual awakening, but it was a moment of connectivity, a download of information. I was like, this is not for you. You need to pursue this. And I did. And I moved to LA and I got into meditation and just doing a lot of my inner work. That was actually my biggest priority. And the noise around me started to stop. The voice of my parents, the voice of society, my friends, my peers, whatever it may be of what I should be, what makes me worthy, what's right, all these expectations and attachments that we have, right? I mean, a lot of our parents raised us to be very guilty.
Yeah.
A lot of our parents raised us just to be very guilty to be alive. They don't mean to, because they don't even know that they're doing that. But when you start telling children things like, you know, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out. Look how much I do for you. Well, it's like, you're the one who decided to have me. I didn't knock on the door and say, pay for me, right? So there's accountability all around. And when I started losing, like, hey, I don't owe my parents anything. I do for them because I love them, but I don't do for them because I owe them, because I don't. I don't have a duty towards them. I don't owe them anything. They're not a liability. So I dropped that weight. Felt good. Then I was like, wait, I'm more than the skin, this meat that I was put on. That's all it is. Just a look. I don't need to defend it. It already is there. Whether I talk about it or not, I happen to have skin that's brown, happens to be tied to this culture, which is Indian, and I don't need to do or prove anything. It's already there.
Right.
Just like I don't have to think about breathing. I breathe. It's already taken care of, so I don't need, oh, that feels good. And then who I am is more than the amount of money I make or other people's opinions of me. And I felt like a butterfly, man. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. All this stuff that I was told was useless. There was other people's pain and projections and controlling and all these things that were embedded on me that felt very weighted. And I felt free. And I was like, this is amazing. This is life. This is what people call awakening. This is when you see life differently and realize everyone's living an illusion. Like I was. Mm. And then you start expanding. Oh, this is my truth.
Yeah. And for those of you watching, this is a put together podcast conversations where Pritesh, Shah, we were talking about the dual conversation about victimization and identity, and really how one holds us, I guess how they're united and
incredibly united.
We were just listening to his story about how he came to be aware of, I guess, the identity cape that we carry. That
we've been raised with, all of us.
Because again, there's been certain parts in my life where people have pointed to me and said, that's not all who you are. Let me show you another way. And God knows I've never been able to find her. Gerald Brown was my typing teacher in 1990 in Dallas, Texas.
Damn.
This was it was called BTI Business School. It's no longer around. But she was my typing teacher, and I just moved back from Mexico, and I had a thicker accent going on. And she came up to me in private and said, you're smart, you're intelligent, and you're hardworking. And you're going to be representing a company at one point. We just need to work on your speech. And I was like, and at first I was like, well, fuck you. And then I thought, maybe she's right. So she paid for me to go to a month of Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. And
speech therapy.
Yeah, I did that for a month, 3 times a week with the teacher that she paid for. It was a friend of hers. And at the end of the month, I could feel the difference. And he was like, now go home and keep doing that. If I had been stuck, if I had felt that, I mean, if I had felt the victim of her comment, if I had said, well, I'm never going to succeed, I probably would not be here hosting a show now. Does that make sense?
It does. It goes down to the thing of like, this is one thing I learned a lot. We judge others by their actions and we judge ourselves by our intentions. So we judge others by what they do. And when it comes to us, we're like, no, that's not what I meant. And that's the duality, that's the issue. Because you're not judging people on their intentions, you're judging people on what they do. And when it comes to you, you're thinking about what you meant. Yeah. And that's always the issue when you think about interactions and communication with people, right? And that's why we tend to find ourselves the innocent ones in stories that we tell ourselves. We end up being the right ones, whatever that means.
Because I will admit that for a while there, I was like, how dare she? And then I thought, she's just trying to help me out.
You'll find in the world what you want to find. If you want to find racism and that's how you live life, you will find it freaking everywhere. Someone could be having a busy day, or they could have a really sad day and they could walk by you and not say hi and you'll be like, oh, that guy's racist. Well, maybe that guy's just having a terrible day and doesn't want to talk to anybody. It had nothing to do with you at all. Most things in life, if you take a step back, are not personal. 99.9% of things that happen around you are not personal. People are living their own lives and you are not a part of it. You are not, they're not thinking about you. Okay, you are not that important. And that's very humbling. That's very humbling for all of us. Most people don't give a shit. They're just trying to, people are working hard enough to figure their own being out. They don't have time for you, man. So stop thinking that it's all about you. You are not the center of attention. You're the center of attention for you, like you should be.
Yeah.
And everyone else should be their own. Be the lead in your own film. But when you start walking around talking about this, and this person treats me this way, and this person treats me this way, well, most of the time I found is the people in my life who complain about everyone else being a douchebag are douchebags.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how that works.
Now, segue to, we'll go back to the day that I met Pritesh. We were at this comedy show, and I was doing a pre-show show for that show. And
I was a little late.
Pritesh was late, and obviously he didn't know what was going on. So I'm shutting down because the show's about to start. In my head, in my world, Pritesh was a dick.
I was a dick. He didn't know that I had a premiere, and I already told the booker that I'd be late.
Right. But in my world, I was like, how dare you
come late,
not be here on time and talk to me.
Yeah.
I am Daniel Garza, and I have a pre-show show. How dare... And for a while there, I was like, this guy's a dick. Like, this guy's a total dick. So then... But this is something that I learned a long time ago, is I can't live with that judgment. I had to confront that judgment and figure out for myself.
But you carry that energy
and
for yourself when you have that judgment.
Yeah. So I actually approached them and I said, hey, I want you to be on my podcast. Here's my card. And even on the day that I showed up here to do it, I still told them, like, I just thought you were going to be a dick. And I was like, and even though if you listen to the podcast, I do acknowledge this. And I think that's one of the things that has helped me along my journey is acknowledging when I'm having those feelings and confronting them, going, I thought you were a total asshole, but I wanted to confirm it and I wanted to talk to you. And then in the end, we had a great conversation, and here you are again. And now I did a pre-show show on your show.
Well, you know, one thing I learned with that too, because that ego speaking is always going to be there. That instilling of fear and judgment to protect ourselves, right? I want to make sure I'm not the bad person. He's the dick. Right. Or she's the bitch. Or whatever. Like, that's all self-protective qualities. We can all validate it, but in your inner being, the reason that comes up is we were protecting ourselves because we feel hurt or not validated, right? And I think it's an important part of meditation that people have a problem with, and I did too, is they assume that when you meditate, you're supposed to have zero thoughts. No. The real start of meditation is observing your thoughts. So you don't look at life and go, I was thinking. No, my mind was thinking. So now when I have a thought that might be jealous or whatever it may be, I kind of laugh. Well, that's funny, my mind thought that. It doesn't own me. It's not who I am. My thoughts don't own you anymore. So when you have those thoughts, you just kind of laugh. You become an observer of your mind because you are not your mind.
Yeah. And this goes to, if you guys remember, Guy Nolan was on podcast also. Guy Nolan is a white guy, goatee, shaved head, and he'll say it in his comedy, he looks like a Nazi. Mm-hmm. The first time I saw him we were at Cobain's comedy taking a class together. The first time I saw him, I was scared of him. And I thought, this guy is a total homophobe, bigot, and then his comedy focuses around that. So I was like, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to be near him. And then I thought, whoa, you're being harsh. So I just like you, I went up and gave him my card. I said, I want you to be on my podcast. And he did, and we're good friends now. But when I was growing up, my parents, well, my dad specifically, was of the, don't trust black people, don't be friends with white people, any other race is trying to bring you down, and any other Mexican is just trying to hurt you. So basically I was like, so who are we supposed to be friends with? Like, what?
I mean, it's a similar thing, bro. I was told the same, similar stuff. It's all identity-based issues, right?
How have you navigated being your own person and still respecting your parents?
Well, I mean, I'm very blessed that my sister and I are very similar in the way we operate and being on the path of transformation. So I'm very lucky that our parents have been very receptive, and they've been doing the work too. They started doing Kundalini yoga, they started doing breath work, a lot of things, because we had honest conversations. And they might not necessarily agree, or they might be confused by it, but there's respect, and they understand. And they understand when we're talking and coming from this place, that energy, they feel it. There's positivity, there's acceptance, there's lack of judgment, there's truth, authenticity. You can't deny that. right?
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm asking you to be who you are.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Because it was really hard for a long time breaking away from the way my parents taught me to be around people.
Yeah.
And I realized that I couldn't live with that fear, especially with the limitations that society was putting on me. Latino, gay man. Then when I became HIV positive, that was another stigma. Being an alcoholic and drug addict, that was an added stigma. So every time something...
You got anything more, dude?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Cancer survivor, so there's that one too.
You got a lot, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing is too is understanding where my parents came from. So I have to respect and have understanding of what their mindset was, what was put upon them, right? Coming to this new country, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, not having any friends, being 10,000 miles away from everything you knew and trusted and loved. I can only imagine that type of trauma.
Yeah.
And so I also have to be real with that. These people are approaching 60 years old. They're not going to be completely open to changing or they're in a position of habits, right? They do what's habitual. That's how they've been raised. Habits are good. I don't really think habits are good. Good or bad habits. Habits in general is doing things like a robot. It's a habit.
Right.
But the beauty of being a human being compared to all animals is that we have the ability to do things consciously. We can breathe consciously. We can talk consciously. We can move consciously. So habits take conscious out of it. You just do it like a robot, which is actually not very healthy.
Yeah. So
but that's a whole other thing.
For those of you watching, thank you for joining us so far. We have a little more time to go. This is Put Together Conversations with Pritesh Shah. We're talking about identity and victimization. If you have any comments or any questions that you want to ask or want to add to the conversation, thank you, Christian, for joining us in the conversation. Please do so. Christian is remembering that I went to him and said, that guy said dick. But I want to interview him.
That's hilarious. I mean, it's not like I remember in college, this has happened since college. We were in my sociology class and we had to all sit around and talk about our first impressions of each other. And in my group, there was like 4 other people and they all said they thought I would be an arrogant player dick. Because apparently that's the vibe they got. Not the vibe, that's just their projections of me. Mm. They didn't know me, but I guess I have a resting bitch face, so when I'm not smiling, those are their assumptions. And then they said, once you open your mouth, they're like, oh, you're funny, you're friendly, you're kind. So it's interesting to me. Those don't bother me. It's like the other thing. I don't really care what someone, other people say about someone. I care more about the person who's talking shit about everybody else.
Yeah.
You're gauging. I don't care what you have to say about the other person. I care about what comes out of your mouth. And what type of energy comes out of your mouth. If you're the type of person who's always talking crap about people or judging people, I'm more concerned about you than the people you're speaking of. Because that's just your own biasy.
And that I learned in rehab.
Yeah. Of course you did.
Which, by the way, this Friday is my 13th recovery birthday.
Congrats!
So, I'll be clean and sober 13 years. For those of you that are watching the earlier show, no, I talked about that.
That's awesome, man. Congrats.
But that, and I bring that up in this conversation because that was a change that shifted my energy in a different way. Because as an alcoholic and drug addict, I was always concerned about what people thought. Always concerned. There was always this, because I was living in my own guilt, that I thought everybody was talking about me. Everybody was pointing fingers. And like you said, nobody gave a crap. Nobody really thought about me.
They don't have much time to.
And then I sobered up and I went, and one of the lessons that they tell us in rehab is like, what other people think about you is none of your business.
It really isn't. And the thing is, like, when you care about what other people think, you become a prisoner of their mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, most people really go through that in high school, right? Very gossipy. You always worry about what everyone thinks about you. And if you find out someone doesn't like you, every day you wake up and figure out how you can change their mind, right? I mean, that's the first thought. I remember if I liked a girl and realized she didn't like me, I'm like, oh, okay, how do I get her to like me? And that was like a constant thought process in my mind, right? Mm-hmm. It took me over. I wasn't able to expand outside of it. So it's really not important what other people think about you. It really is zero. It's like, a lot of things in society, we've created a lot of inauthenticity, like first impressions, everything. If you think first impressions, everything, you're a dick. That's when you're a dick. That's judgmental as shit. It's like that. I made a video about that earlier today when people are like, I read people well. I'm like, no, you judge people well.
Right.
That's what you do. That's what you do. Okay, unless you've done the transformational work inside where you're a Sadhguru or a Buddha, people like that, or Dalai Lama can literally look at you in your eyes and they can get your energy bodies, which people who do the work can. We all can if you do the work. Outside of that, if you're just a person who's operating from their mind and from that frequency, you are not good at reading people because you can't even read yourself. Most people can't. They want to think they can because it makes them feel good. Right. Makes them feel like, oh, look at me, I'm different than you, I'm good at reading people, but you ain't.
No.
You ain't. You make a judgment on someone, you'll wait for that judgment to be proven true, and then be like, see, I knew it. No, you didn't. You didn't know shit.
And that's one of